What's up guys, Nathan here, back again with another Goldfishing playtest video. Today we're Goldfishing my high power Yarok enters the battlefield deck. This deck does not contain any infinites, but it is considered high power and aims to assemble a lethal board state by turn 7. If you haven't already seen the full deck tech I made for this deck, check that out first and then come back to this video. This is meant to be sort of the companion video to that, so you can see how this deck actually playtests in practicality. We're going to be running a couple of different playtests. The first one will assume very little interaction for Yarok. The second, we will assume that Yarok is removed via a Swords to Plowshares-esque effect if we don't have a counterspell to stop it as soon as he hits the board. In my own playing of this deck, Yarok typically is removed within a turn or two, and so that's why we're running so many free counters in order to stop that, because he doesn't have any built-in protection, and he's a very glaring threat on the board that says, hey, if you don't remove me, I'm going to pop off like mad. So, all right, first game here, we'll hop in to our playtester, and as usual, feel free to leave a like and subscribe and all that fun YouTube stuff. All right, so looking at our hand here, we have a total of 5 lands, which is a lot, but this will guarantee at least a Yarok drop on time, and we do have a ramp piece in the form of Llanowar Visionary. I think this hand is acceptable to keep. We even have a Displacer Kitten, which we can drop before Yarok, perhaps. Although typically I like to see Displacer Kitten with like instants and sorceries and removal spells. But I think that while we don't have a turn 2 play, which is a little bit scuffed, we're going to go ahead and keep this because I do like erring on the side of more lands rather than less. So turn 1 here, we're going to start the game, and we have a 6 mana Brood Monitor here, which is looking absolutely excellent. I'm going to actually sort our lands by, our non-lands by CMC here, which I like to do. Brood Monitor gets to go to the back. Okay, so let's drop a Watery Grave tapped to start us off here so that we avoid the 2 life. We'll go next. Then we're going to go Rejuvenating Springs. We'll enter untapped. Then we go next without a turn 2 play. We do have a piece of interaction here in the form of an Offer You Can't Refuse. Great with Displacer Kitten, by the way. So let's drop, let's see, we've got our Sultai colors here if we drop our forest, so we'll do that. We'll play a Llanowar Visionary. When it ETBs, draw a card. Once again, with Yarok on the field, that's a Divination plus a Mana Dork, which is pretty great. We'll go next to turn 4 here. We've got an Amphibian Downpour for some great removal. So we'll probably just drop the Command Tower for color fixing, and I think at this point, we have the option of either playing the Displacer Kitten and getting value, or we can drop a Soul Shatter. And here's where we would take a look at what's on the board. If there are, several of our opponent's commanders on the board, and those are what would be removed with a Soul Shatter, I would go ahead and drop the Soul Shatter. Or if we're playing against Spellslinger type of opponents, I drop the Amphibian Downpour on an opponent's turn, although I will say that this card does get better in the late game as players cast more spells. So I think for now, we'll just go sort of the straight value route, although we do have 5 mana for a Yarok play, but I would like to hold up an Offer You Can't Refuse when we play Yarok. So I think first of all, we'll go ahead and play the Displacer Kitten. That's going to be a pretty red flag for our opponents because this card can kind of go off, so we're building threat, but that's okay. Presumably everybody else has dropped their commander and is also a threat. We'll go next, and this is going to be our Yarok turn here, so let's go Plaza of Heroes so that we can get some protection out if we need it. Its last ability here, 3 mana, tap, exile, Plaza of Heroes. Target legendary creature gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. So let's go ahead and tap our, we need to leave 1 blue up, so let's go ahead and tap our Mana Dorks here, and we will cast Yarok from the command zone. And we are going to assume that on our opponent's turn, once we pass, we will encounter a removal attempt. And so here we will play an Offer You Can't Refuse with our 1 blue up, and that will trigger our Displacer Kitten to then exile and have the Llanowar Visionary re-enter. Now, when that enters, that will trigger us, Yarok, the extra ETB trigger to draw 2 cards. So we'll go ahead and do that. And that looks great because we drew a Earthshaker Giant, which is a nice overrun effect. So here we've got a great curve into Brood Monitor, into Earthshaker Giant. So we're looking really good here. So now it comes back to our turn 6. We're going to probably just drop a land. We'll play the City of Brass. Why not? So right now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 6, 7 mana. I think the straightforward play would probably be to play the Brood Monitor and then the Earthshaker Giant next turn, and theoretically we could swing out with the Earthshaker Giant buff, giving everything +6/+6. We do have a limited protection for Yarok at the moment, and we could hold up a Soul Shatter and an Amphibian Downpour for just oodles of Displacer Kitten triggers, flickering our Llanowar Visionary. So we technically could draw, let's see, so it would be 1, 2, 3, 4 cards off of casting the Soul Shatter and Amphibian Downpour right now. So here's again where you have to sort of ask yourself, okay, what are our opponents doing? I'm going to assume that our opponents are doing pretty scary things at the moment. So on our opponent's turns, we're just going to pass with 7 mana up. And let me think about this actually. If we would have played our Tireless Provisioner, I think we would have been able to probably refund ourselves a couple of treasure tokens if we were to drop that Tireless Provisioner. But we do have a Force of Will to counter, so maybe we just save the Force of Will, and we will need to hold on to the Amphibian Downpour to pitch the Force of Will for a future turn with an overrun effect with our Earthshaker Giant. So maybe that changes the calculus a little bit. Let's actually assume that we run out our Tireless Provisioner, and I'm going to be the takesies backsies guy. We're going to assume that we then play our land, so we have to tap our 3 land in order to play that Tireless Provisioner. So landfall, we will create ourselves 2 treasure tokens. So we are going to assume that we did that, and we're going to assume that we can make a copy of this fella right here. How do I do that in Architect? We're going to create a token copy, create 1 copy. Okay. So now we still have 5 mana up, and then I think on an opponent's turn, what we're going to do is probably cast that Soul Shatter. We actually have 6 mana though. Now that I look at our Llanowar Visionary, so hold on, does that change the calculus? I think we do need the protection up for a Brood Monitor Earthshaker Giant play, although now would be a nice time to set up the Brood Monitor. So I think we actually just spend the mana now, right? Because that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yeah, let's do that. So let's use up the treasures. We're going to tap Llanowar Visionary and 3 other mana, taking a damage off of that. And we are going to play the Brood Monitor. So when this ETBs, and by the way, if our opponents try to interrupt this, we cast the Force of Will, pitching the Amphibian Downpour. But in the time being, when it ETBs, we'll create 6 Eldrazi Scions, which is going to basically refund all of our mana that we just spent on it, which is why this card is crazy in a Yarok deck. We need to create 5 copies of this guy. Okay, and then we go to our next turn, so we're going to assume that we encounter another removal attempt. So we're going to cast the Force of Will, pitching the Amphibian Downpour. I think that's a pretty fair assessment, but then we have a Displacer Kitten trigger, and the question is, let's see, can we, okay, so we have to do a non-land permanent. I was going to say maybe we could get more treasures off of the Tireless Provisioner. So now I think what we would do is we would just flicker the Brood Monitor to create 6 more Scions. So we're going to create those once more, and we're going to create, let's see, create a token copy, 5 token copies, and then we go to next turn. We don't have the protection up for the Earthshaker Giant, but once again, it just depends on what we would have encountered, and we can go ahead and cast their, well, we would play the Flooded Grove, generate the 2 treasures, and then we would cast that Earthshaker Giant, and then, let's see, even if we were to encounter a counterspell for Earthshaker Giant, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 mana, and then 2 treasures, so that would be 9, 10 mana, so we would be 1 short of casting the Elrond of the White Council, but what we could do, let's say Earthshaker Giant goes through, we would have a lethal board state, but then even if that were to get fogged for some reason, we would be able to cast the Soul Shatter, get another Displacer Kitten trigger to then flicker the Earthshaker Giant on a future turn to then buff our stuff up again, or we would have the Elrond of the White Council to basically buff our stuff up as another potential overrun effect. So I would consider that lethal by turn 7-ish. It might take, 1 more turn after that if we've encountered a lot of blocking pressure that would have minimized our board state, but even after all of that, we have all of the mana in the world to do whatever we want with these Eldrazi Scions. Okay, so let's go new game, and I think that in that first game we still did assume a heavy level interaction, so let's just maybe continue that trend here just to see how things tend to play out. So we've got 3 lands, we've got our Sultai colors, that's perfect. Sakarian Infiltrator I consider a 5-drop. We've got card draw, we've got ramp and card draw, and we've got ramp and card draw. So this is like the perfect hand once again. So let's go ahead and keep. So turn 1, we're going to play that Overgrown Tomb enters tapped. We're going to go next. We're going to go Command Tower, I believe. And then probably just a regular old Coiling Oracle. So green and a blue here for Coiling Article. Reveal the top card of your library. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. Otherwise, put it in your hand. So we go ahead and do that. This goes into our hand. It is not a land. That's totally fine. Then let's go next turn. We'll drop this island. I think right now it's really important to draw cards, but we can get a guaranteed extra mana with Karametra's Favor at the risk of not explicitly curving out. So I actually like the Karametra's Favor play here because we are just staying on tempo for a mana generation. So let's cast the Karametra's Favor, and by the way, if we have Yarok on the field, Generous Patron is a 3-mana draw 4, so that's not the worst to wait to cast this at a later point in the game. So Karametra's Favor will enter, it will draw a card, and we're going to sort it like so, and this will now be a mana dork. So we do have the 2 mana up, but we're not going to be able to use it, and we will draw a card off of that ETB trigger. We drew a Displacer Kitten, which is great value, or it can pitch to our Force of Will as well. So let's go next turn here. So we've got an Uro, that's great. We're not at the magical 5 CMC to cast Yarok quite yet, so I think we're just going to look for more curving out and value. I think it's okay to keep up 1 for an offer in this case, so let's cast something for 3 CMC. I think Uro is probably just the best effect that we could possibly do at this very moment. Fierce Empath will be able to grab us a board in a can or an overrun effect. We've already got an overrun effect here. I don't think Fierce Empath is quite good enough to play here because we're still in the ramping stage. So I think Uro is going to be the play here. And we're going to cast Uro. So when this ETB, sack it unless it is escaped. When ETBs or attacks, you gain 3, draw a card, then you may put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield. So we're going to really hope that we draw a land here and this will get sacrificed. Let's see. And we will go ahead because it's just draw, right? Enters battlefield. Yeah. Draw a card. Okay, so we can't make a land drop. Okay, so now we really need to draw a lot of cards in order to generate that extra land drop on our next turn. So big sad here on turn number 4. We only have 1 mana left, and I'm guessing we're probably not going to use it for an offer you can't refuse, but we will have to pitch a card at the end of our turn. I think we probably pitch one of the counter spells for a discard cleanup step, so let's pitch the Flare of Denial because we don't want to get rid of that mana dork. So let's go next turn. Okay, so we do have a piece of ramp. That's okay. That's okay. So let's go Llanowar Visionary, and then when that ETBs, we would draw a card. It is not a land, unfortunately. We're really getting land screwed, but that's okay. We're seeing how the deck performs under pressure of getting land screwed. All right, so we're at turn 5 here. We really need a Yarok cast, and we're probably taking a lot of damage from our opponent's board states at this point in time. So let's go. So we're gonna have to then pitch another card. What is not useful right now? I think card draw is useful. Rottenmouth Viper is a form of removal, so I guess it would depend on what our opponents have, but I think for now, maybe we just drop the I think we just drop the Rottenmouth Viper for now. Okay, so then we'll go to next turn, turn 6. We finally have a land. Do we have anything with landfall? Okay, so let's go 5 immediately. Although the question is, do we want to tap a land for that, or do we want to tap our mana dork creature? I think we want to tap the land because I don't have anything that cares about the landfall. So let's go 5 into our Yarok on the field here. A little bit late, but welcome nonetheless. And now we do have multiple counter spells up for removal. So we're going to assume that a removal spell is cast on Yarok. Let's go and offer You Can't Refuse into the graveyard. Oops, and I'm sorry. Let's assume that we tap this like an adult. So we would have left up this guy, tapped down our land, our visionary, and so now we tap down our last blue for an offer you can't refuse to fend off a removal spell. And let's assume that we encounter a lot of removal. Let's actually go ahead and cast the Force of Will, pitching the Displacer Kitten for free. We're just going to assume that our opponents really want Yarok dead. So let's go to turn 7. Okay, so we're behind in the fact that we really need an army before we can play our Earthshaker Giant to swing out. So we have some catching up to do. We have 6 mana. Now, if we play the Clifftop Lookout, I think maybe what we do first here actually is to draw some cards with a Generous Patron, hoping we get a land drop, because then we can then play our Clifftop Lookout. I think that's probably the play, although Sakarian Infiltrator can draw 6 cards for 5 mana as long as we have Yarok on the field. So we have this sort of narrow window of opportunity to get a lot of value. I think, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and if we need to cast the Clifftop. So I think the play is probably Generous Patron into Clifftop Lookout, if I'm being honest. Okay, so Generous Patron, we'll go 1, 2, let's just do 3 off of that. So we're going to put 4 1/1 counters on our opponent's creatures, and so we will draw ourselves 4 cards off of that, because the ETB is doubled, and the rules do say that it does draw 1 card for each counter. So we're going to go ahead and draw ourselves 4 cards here. Okay, we've got a lot going on here. I think we play probably the Watery Grave at this point in time. And I'm going to tap that aura just because it looks better. So that's fine. So then we'll play the Clifftop Lookout. When it ETBs, reveal cards from the top until you reveal a land card. Put that card on the battlefield tapped and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So let's do this. So we're going to reveal cards from the top until we reveal a land card. Okay, Bojuka Bog goes on the battlefield. That's great. We can exile 2 players' graveyards when that ETBs, but it will ETB tapped. That's okay. And then let's see. So then these would go on the bottom. So we're just going to shortcut this. So let's look for another land here. Burgeoning. Looking for a land. Exotic Orchard goes onto the battlefield tapped as well, which is great. Okay, so then this, I'm just going to, let's see, I think I can control click all of these cards. Let's see if I can do this really cleanly here. Move to the bottom of library. Gosh, I love Architect. That is so silky smooth. Move to the bottom of library. Okay. So we've ramped ourselves quite a bit here. We've got 4 mana left to play. Oh, wait, no, I don't think I tapped down my mana for the Clifftop Lookout. So we only have 1 mana left, and I can't really do anything from there. So I think that will wrap the turn for us. Now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 creatures available. So we could look at potentially casting our Earthshaker Giant. If we don't do that, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 mana. I was hoping, okay, so whatever we do, we have protection because we have a Sink into Stupor with the mana available to us, and then we would potentially have another mana. So really up to 10 mana currently. So I think we just go Prismatic Vista, crack this for probably another forest is what I'm thinking. We'll move that to the battlefield untapped. Separate that from our Exotic Orchard here. Okay, so let's see, and I believe Architect auto shuffles the deck, so that's fine. So I think if we were to cast our Earthshaker Giant, we would get a total +6/+6, which would make for a total of 7, 15, 22 plus 22 plus 9 is 31, plus 7 is 38 damage, so we could take somebody out. Or what we could do is probably play the Woodland Bellower, get a Scute Swarm and a Springbloom Druid off of that. And I didn't realize I should have actually saved the Prismatic Vista and played the Vesuva instead, because then we'd be able to get 2 landfall triggers off of the Scute Swarm. So, man, this is where if you were a better Magic player, you know, you'd have a lot more value accruing advantage. But again, let's say that we are perfect Magic well, no, let's not rewind. That's too much. That's too much. You know, we learn from our mistakes here. So I think we'd probably wait, probably go for the Woodland Bellower here for 6, 4, 5, 6, and then, because that would then shoot out a Scute Swarm, Scute, move to battlefield, and then we would look at our Springbloom Druid to start getting some landfall triggers going. So I think we would probably just move that to battlefield, and then so that would then force a landfall trigger on the Scute Swarm, and that says you could just come on land, so we would get a token copy of that. So create a token copy. We're going to do 1, and so now Springbloom Druid resolves, and we will, I'm sorry, what was the token copy from? The token copy, oh, okay, so sorry, I did that ahead of time with the Springbloom Druid, so we would grab our last basic, which I believe is a swamp in the deck. So we're resolving that first, and we do have to sacrifice a land in order to get that swamp. So I think at this point we can probably just sacrifice maybe this forest that's already tapped, and that snow-covered swamp will enter tapped as well. But now, then we go to our next turn here. We still would have at least 3 mana up to protect against a board wipe. So we'd have to use our Sink into Stupor, and we would have 2 blue available to cast that by tapping our Quelling Oracle and our Bojuka Bog. So we would protect ourselves against a board wipe there. Next turn, we go Vesuva. We make 2 more copies of Scute Swarm. Or I'm sorry, that would actually be, oh, so the landfall will get doubled off of Scute Swarm. So actually, we would get 2 total copies of Scute Swarm off of that last turn. And then with the Vesuva entering tapped, then we would get a total of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Scute Swarms. But I'm not going to create those for the moment, because really we would just want to play our Earthshaker Giant, and we wouldn't have protection for that, but that's okay. And so now we would be able to swing for a lot more damage by turn 9, and the next turn, or assuming that we encountered interaction with our Earthshaker Giant, we could actually just play our Great Oak Guardian, which will also untap our creatures, and then assuming we still had Yarok, we would be able to refill our hand by paying a bunch of mana into Sakarian Infiltrator to draw us, you know, a few cards there. So even if we stay, you know, 5 mana to pay the squad cost once, we would draw a total of, I believe, 6 cards off of that. And so we would draw into more protection and a Critter Hoof next turn. So if not able to swing end the game by turn 9, we could certainly end it by turn 10. So that is my Yarok the Desecrated high-powered ETB value deck. Hopefully you guys enjoyed seeing how this deck plays out. I absolutely love Flicker decks. They are my, like, candy whenever I play Commander. I try not to play them too much because I don't want to sort of, you know, wear out the novelty of them, but they are really one of my favorite archetypes. So anyway, that's the video. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, leave a like on the video, subscribe to see more content from me, and hopefully we'll see you all in the next one.